unless some kind of crazy thing changes in the NFL, I don't see Brett Favre's record of 336 interceptions ever being broken. Hello, welcome to Just the Stats, a show that celebrates the legendary careers of NFL football players. The goal of this show is to present on as often as possible the leaders in the statistical categories of the NFL. Not everyone, though we may touch on them now and then, but just the main ones, the ones that I prefer. But if you ever have a stat you're interested in, let me know and we'll include that. Unlike other shows that cover the NFL, this one's going to deal most of the time with the stats that the players have or the teams have, not what is this player doing being traded to another team, why is Tucker being booted off his team and the ramifications of that. We may discuss it only in the sense that where he stood in the stats as far as all-time kickers, but we're not going to go delving into his personal life, that type of thing. We'll leave the other podcasts for that. I listen to those as well, but I always felt like there was a huge gap, a huge void where it came to the stats that the teams had. When I was younger, and this is going to date me, but I would read the newspaper, and every Monday morning, I'd look at the stats that the teams had. Every game, who won, and then I'd look through the list, what were the passing stats, the rushing stats. Now, I know you can do that on the internet, but generally, I noticed even with myself, unless I make a concerted effort, I really look at fantasy stats. I do enjoy fantasy football, and I'll look at those types of stats. Was I looking at the overall stats of the player? And I really do enjoy it. So that's what I'm going to bring to this podcast, and I hope you enjoy it. Being that this is the very first podcast, I thought we would start with the all-time great players and in their careers. Who were the greatest in their positions on a career basis? My name is Ernie, and I hope you enjoy Just the Stats. So for the first stat, we're going to look at the passing yards. This is an easy one. You'll know who's going to lead in that stat, and that is Tom Brady. He has a lot of the career stat leader in a lot of categories. Not every one as far as passing goes, but a lot of them. Tom Brady is the NFL all-time holder in passing yards with 89,214. Now, he played for 23 years, which is longer than the other players, and he does have a big lead. I sometimes feel Tom Brady pushed that record out as far as he could get it, where it makes it very difficult for some to beat him. Though I do think someday any passing record, any receiving record is liable to be broken. Though I will say that with over 89,000 yards, somebody like Patrick Mahomes is playing right now would need another 15 years at a high level to catch Tom Brady. So it's not going to be easy. But with the way the league is, as far as being pass happy, it's a possibility. Number 2 on the list is Drew Brees with just over 80,000. They're the top 2. And after that, you have Peyton Manning, of course. There was a period there where the 3 of them were competing against each other, but as each one retired, that left Tom Brady to just keep going more and more farther and putting the lead out farther than the rest of them had added before him. The active players right now, number 7 is Aaron Rodgers, who has almost 63,000 yards. 62,952. He's not going to catch the top 3. I mean, right now it looks like he's playing year to year, and this could be his last year. If he plays, he only needs a little over 1,000 yards, which is kind of interesting, to pass Ben Roethlisberger for number 5, because right now every indication is that he is going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So he could move into 5th place ahead of Ben Roethlisberger, the Pittsburgh Steeler, retired Pittsburgh Steeler, and pass him for number 5. So that's kind of ironic. He is really, you have Russell Wilson, Joe Flacco, Kirk Cousins, who are active, but none of those players stand any kind of chance of moving too far up the ladder. Matthew Stafford's number 10, and he still has a few more years in him. He came in the league in 2009, so he's played 15 years. I doubt he plays 23 like Tom Brady, but let's say he plays another 4 or 5 seasons. Let's say 4 seasons. That could really push him up there in the top 4. I doubt he'll catch Tom Brady. He'd have to play. He still needs 30,000 yards for that, and he'd have to play quite a few more years for that. But Matthew Stafford, somebody who will move up the list and pass Aaron Rodgers at one point. Let's look at Derek Carr. Talk about Derek Carr for a minute because he retired. He finished 22nd in the NFL in all-time passing yards with 41,200. I'd say he had a good year, a good career. He wasn't great, but he wasn't terrible. He had 4 Pro Bowl years, so he had some good years. In 2015 with the Raiders, he had 4. He led the league in quarterback comebacks with 4, game-winning drives 4. So he has had some good years, but when you look at his overall record, he had an overall losing record, 77 wins, 92 losses. Obviously, it's not always on him. You have defense as well, but he was a good quarterback. And if he could have been on a team with a strong offensive line on a regular basis, a good defense, maybe he had a chance. More of a passing game where the team wasn't relying on him always to move him forward. But he was okay. And, like I said, an above-average quarterback, not great. You won't see him in the Hall of Fame or anything like that, but he wasn't too bad. So active players, like I said, you have Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford at the top. Patrick Mahomes is the next guy that has a good chance of dramatically moving up the list, but he's still at 48th. He's such a young quarterback compared to Matthew Stafford and so forth. So he's just going to move up this list, jumping 10, 15 spaces a year until he gets closer to the top. And so it won't take him too many more years. He'll be pushing the top 10, and then we'll just see from there where he goes. This is a record that Fran Tarkenton held for almost 20 years, and he had the record at 47,000. So you can see that since then, quite a few people have passed him. There are actually 13 players have passed him. Warren Moon is somebody who just passed him with 49,000. You throw in the yards he had in the Canadian Football League, and he had quite a few passing yards in his lifetime as a professional football player. Too bad he didn't get to play in the NFL his entire career. He was a great player as well. So there's a couple of brothers on this list. Peyton Manning's number 3, 71,940, and his brother Eli had 57,000 yards. So that's impressive for brothers. And so those are the leaders in the all-time passing records. Let's look at passing touchdowns. Another career record that's held by Tom Brady, and by this time by quite a large margin. But I still think, again, this is a record that can be broken. Tom Brady has 649 touchdown passes. Drew Brees has 571. He's second. That is a huge lead, 78 touchdown passes. The active player is Aaron Rodgers with 503. He's only the 5th player to pass for more than 500 touchdowns in a career. Now, the interesting thing with Aaron Rodgers, he was one of the fastest. He did it in fewer than 250 games, which is only a feat that's only been achieved by Peyton Manning. So that is impressive. You just wonder how he would have done if he'd have been the starting quarterback his entire career. So he's ranked number 5. He'll easily pass Brett Favre this year if Aaron Rodgers plays, which everybody's saying he will. He only needs 5 to pass Brett Favre for number 4 at 508. I don't know that he can catch Peyton Manning, who has 539. Aaron Rodgers would have to have 36 touchdown passes to tie Peyton Manning, and I'm not sure that in the Pittsburgh offense that he's going to get anywhere near that. I think you see 25 touchdown passes out of Aaron Rodgers might be where he sits. Somebody who has a little bit, well, he's still far behind is Matthew Stafford's number 10 with 377. He should make it to the 400 mark, which only 8 players have made it to 400. So that tells you this is a record that it's going to be hard to catch Tom Brady for years to come. But he'll pass the 400 mark, and we'll see if he can push the 500 mark in a few years from now. Again, when you're looking at it, Patrick Mahomes is the guy. He's got 245 touchdown passes in 30, and he's ranked number 30. So he's played for 8 years, and so you double that. You can see how hard this is. 16 years, that puts him at just under 500 touchdown passes, and that's if he continues at the pace he's on. So, which explains why there's only 5 people that have made it to 500 touchdown passes. You have to have a long career, good health, and have a team where you're a prolific passer. So it's not something that's easy to accomplish. Fran Tarkenton, again, was the leader for years, for almost 20 years again. He had 342 touchdown passes, which still ranks as number 13. 14 people have had 300. So it is a tough record. It was Dan Marino that passed him in the touchdown mark, and Fran Tarkenton had 342. Dan Marino jumped all the way up to 420. He really moved the mark up there. So that's an impressive record, especially back in a time when there weren't as many teams that had such a pass-heavy offense. That's one of the reasons I think, and the primary reason, is that the league has changed so much. Passing is such a important part of the game, and it makes such a huge difference. You see these numbers constantly being pushed as far as all-time records. Look at even when we get to the seasonal records, you'll see that in the passing department, many, many young players are setting records. So that is impressive, and it makes it exciting to see what's going to happen in the passing department and the receiving department of the NFL. Looking at Derek Carr, just because he retired, and I do think he will stay retired, but he finished 22 and at number 22 in the all-time record with 257 touchdown passes. So not bad. Again, he was a good player, not a Hall of Famer, but good. So right now, like I said, Aaron Rodgers is way up at 503. And then we're going to watch Matthew Stafford as he hits the 400 mark. And Patrick Mahomes, we just need to give him a few more years, and he'll be topping out the top 20, and then he'll easily should make top 20 already, and then start pushing the top 15 in a couple years. So he'll be somebody to watch as he moves up the list. On the opposite end of the touchdown passes, the most passes intercepted. Now, this is a category that Tom Brady does not lead in. All right, let's look at passes intercepted. Brett Favre leads this category by a large margin. Now, this one is different than you'll see with the passing yards, passing touchdowns, because you're going to see some older players on this list versus more recent players in the NFL. Brett Favre, though, is the leader, and he has 336, with George Blanda coming in second with 277. Shows you how long ago the record goes back. George Blanda finished his career in 1975. He had the record with 277. And then Brett Favre in 2010, when he retired, ended up with that 336. Just a long time for that record to be held. This is a record, like I said, that I'm not sure that any of the current players will break as far as this passing record. You just don't see quarterbacks anymore that throw this number of interceptions. And if they do, on a seasonal basis, they're not playing very much. Jameis Winston would be the prime example. The guy can throw touchdown passes. It's exciting to watch, but he throws so many interceptions, which he topped with that year when he had 35 touchdown passes and 30 interceptions. You can't do that and continue to play. But back in the day, they did throw a lot of interceptions, and they still stayed on the field. We'll look at seasonal interception leads, and you'll see why George Blanda leads the league in a career category with 277. The closest active player in interceptions, now remember Brett Favre has 336, is Matthew Stafford, has 188. He ranks number 36 on the list, way down there. He'll never pass Brett Favre. I doubt he makes the top 10 in interceptions. So you just don't see it. And you got people like Joe Flacco, Andy Dalton. They're way down the list. And you don't expect them to play that many more years, or if they do play, they're backups, so they're not going to be throwing interceptions that often, and not at a pace that was going to move them up the list. So, like I said, I really don't see, unless some kind of crazy thing changes in the NFL, I don't see Brett Favre's record of 336 interceptions ever being broken. It's just one of those records that no NFL team is going to let a quarterback stay on the field if he's averaging 20 interceptions a season, something like that. You just don't see it in these days. Maybe their first year, but not year after year. It's just not going to happen. Those are your passing leaders, and we will be watching the current players when the season begins, and we'll see, how it goes, and we'll track those players that are moving up the list as they move up the list. So let's move to a different category, and that is the rushing leaders. The all-time rushing leader in yards is Emmitt Smith. Emmitt Smith finished with over 18,000 yards, 18,355 to be exact. Very impressive. Second is Walter Payton with 16,726. So very impressive. Only three players. Frank Gore, who just retired, well, I say just, but retired in 2020, he had 16,000 exactly. So he's the most current. Well, you had Adrian Peterson, who almost made it to 1,000. So it's an impressive record. You do have a mixture here of some newer players, some older players, though I will say that currently Derrick Henry is the only one anywhere near a possibility of moving way up the list. Derrick Henry has 11,423 yards. He's ranked number 19. Now, at his pace, by the end of this year, he could actually move up easily into the top 10. I mean, he only needs about 1,300 yards to break into the top 10. So that's a possibility for him. And with his contract he signs, it sounds like he plans on playing a couple more years, 3 years maybe, at least. And if he does, and he averages 13 to 15, well, if he averaged 1,500 yards, he would put quite a chance at, that'd be 4,500, put him almost at 16. He could break the top three. He'd have to play even a couple more years beyond that to catch Emmitt Smith, but he could definitely catch the number 2 player, Walter Payton, if he played another 4 and maybe even 5 years without getting injured, obviously. That's always the catch with these records, these career-long records. Other than him, Ezekiel Elliott, whose career is almost over, which is very interesting because he's got 9,000 yards, but he came in the league the same year as Derrick Henry. And yet you look at Ezekiel Elliott, is pretty much washed up, and Derrick Henry still has, even though he is, just turning 31, but you just look at him differently. You look at Derrick Henry and say, he's still got some juice, whereas Ezekiel Elliott just doesn't seem to. So those are some of the leaders. You got Saquon Barkley, who give him a few years if he doesn't get hurt. Christian McCaffrey was somebody who had a good shot, but he just couldn't stay on the field. So you have Saquon Barkley, Joe Mixon, Josh Jacobs. Those three, they have a good chance of moving farther up the list as time goes on. So that's interesting. 2 players who I think had a good chance of breaking, or not breaking, but having had the record that Emmitt Smith would have had to try to beat instead of having to beat Walter Payton, was Barry Sanders and Jim Brown. Both of them had short careers, and yet they're way up the list. Barry Sanders played 10 years and had 15,000 yards. He had a shot at breaking the record. He's 3,000 yards behind. If he plays, Emmitt Smith played for 15 years. He had an easy shot at breaking the record or setting the record, but he just decided to retire, and good for him. Bad for fans because he was such an exciting player, but he definitely had a chance to set the record. And the same with Jim Brown. Jim Brown averaged 104 yards a game over his career. That's the highest in the NFL. Barry Sanders averaged over 100. So those two players definitely had a chance. Jim Brown finished 11th in rushing yards and with over 12,000. But he decided he'd rather go into movies and went to Hollywood instead. So good for him. But he's a player that would have been fun to watch. He was massive at the time he was playing. He played from 57 to 1965. And he was a beast out there running, Very different than Barry Sanders, who was somebody small, but boy, he was hard to even touch sometimes. He had such moves. So we'll be watching basically only Derrick Henry in this category this year. We'll mention some of the other ones as they move up, but really Derrick Henry is by far the leader of current players. So let's look at rushing touchdowns. And again, the leader is Emmitt Smith. He holds the record with 164 touchdowns, which is not a huge lead over LaDainian Tomlinson, who had 145, though he did play quite a few more years than 3-4 years more than LaDainian Tomlinson. Derrick Henry, again, is moving up the list. He's number 6 right now with 106. He just signed this contract or upped his contract for a couple more years. So he has a chance to catch Emmitt Smith at the pace he's going. He definitely has a chance. So we'll watch him as he moves up. He should easily pass Walter Payton for 5th. Walter Payton is 5th with 110. Adrian Peterson is 4th with 120. So Derrick Henry would have to have 14 touchdowns this year, which is not out of the realm of possibility at all for him as far as rushing touchdowns go. It'll take him a couple years to catch LaDainian Tomlinson with 145, depending, probably 3 years into his 3rd year before he would catch him, and 4th year before he'd have a chance at Emmitt Smith. So he's got to play probably 4 more years at least, maybe 5, to catch Emmitt Smith, unless he has some season where he just pushes 20-plus touchdowns in a season, which is definitely possible. That'll be an interesting category we can look at when we get to the seasonal records for rushing touchdowns in a season. And it's just fascinating. You do not see the amount of rushing touchdowns in a season that you did in the past, and not that far past either. So, but it'll be something we'll look at. So Derrick Henry, 106. There's only 10 players with 100 or more touchdowns. Barry Sanders finished one short with 99. Again, Ezekiel Elliott, but he's only got 74 touchdowns. He's ranked 28th. Interestingly enough, Josh Allen is the 3rd active player in touchdowns with 65. Now, what he's chasing is Cam Newton, who was 20 in the NFL in rushing touchdowns with 75. So Josh Allen only needs 10 more touchdowns rushing to catch Cam Newton as the all-time quarterback leader in rushing touchdowns. I definitely think he's going to catch that record and pass it by quite a bit. Beyond that, you have Josh Jacobs, who came in the league in 2019, has already got 61 touchdowns. So he's averaging 11 touchdowns a season, 12 touchdowns a season, something like that, maybe 11. So he has a good chance to move up this list if he continues this double-digit pace. So we'll watch him. Beyond that, you really don't have too many. You have the same people. Joe Mixon. One difference would be James Conner. And then another quarterback moving up the list quickly is Jalen Hurts. He's got 55. He's 10 behind Josh Allen, but he came in the league 2 years later. So he definitely has a chance to catch Josh Allen at some point if he stays healthy. They both stay healthy. It'd be interesting to see Josh Allen at some point pass Cam Newton. He retires, and then here comes Jalen Hurts to pass him in rushing touchdowns. So it'll be a fun thing to watch. So those are your leaders in rushing touchdowns. That's where we're going to stop for today. We will look at receptions and then scoring leaders at the next time we get together, and we'll cover all of those players. It's very interesting to see the passing leaders as just like the other categories. We're going to look at the number one list on the name, that's Jerry Rice, but there are a lot of players moving up the list, and they're moving up fast. So that'll be what we look at in the next episode of Just the Stats. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.